So I'm joined here today with Peyton McGriff. Peyton is the CEO of Style Her Empowered. She is a company, a nonprofit that she founded, and I'm going to let her tell you a bit about it. Peyton was a student at the University of Idaho, graduated 3 or 4 years ago now, and she'll tell you that too. Was a student in my entrepreneurship classes and has grown an incredible nonprofit doing some really important work around the globe. So Peyton, I appreciate you being part of the Boise Startup Week Grow Track. We want to talk about your company, your experience, you, and what you have done over the last few years. So I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit, give us an overview of Style Her Empowered.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be part of this. I founded Style Her Empowered, but we go by she, so you'll hear me refer to that throughout. But we create education and employment opportunities for girls and women around the world. And our program started in 2017, as you mentioned, in the small town of Noche in Togo, Africa. And it's grown to employ 20 women locally in our responsible factory, and now we sponsor 1,180 girls in our town and surrounding villages.
1,000 plus young girls. I remember when you were starting this, it was 24 or some small number.
Yeah, we started with 65 students in 2017 and have doubled each year from then, but this year we actually added 1,000 students to our roster. So it is a big year for us, for sure.
How do you handle that kind of growth?
I mean, it's challenging for sure, and we probably wouldn't have been prepared for it in previous years. Right now, our sponsorships look like a new school uniform, full tuition scholarship, free menstrual supplies, and year-round support from our local staff. And the year-round support is probably the most difficult planning, but we now have just an incredible team of women who are leading the charge in Togo. And so they host bi-monthly workshops in the small villages that are about 20 kilometers from our office. And then every week we host 2 tutoring sessions with local teachers for our students. So it's a lot of onboarding and data collection because we're trying to measure the impact and the growth of our students. And that's probably the biggest challenge that we face for sure.
When you talk about impact, what is the typical impact, and maybe how do you measure that too?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely direct impact that's very easily measured, and then something that we call more anecdotal impact that we collect in stories. And I would say that that's the most powerful example of the impact that we're able to create. So for example, we have students who are, we serve girls who are from 5 years old to 25 years old. And that's in kindergarten through high school. And it's very typical for us to enter a family. Can I start over with this response? I got off track. So how do we measure impact? Okay. Sorry.
All right.
So we measure impact in a variety of ways. I mean, there's direct impact that you can see in the numbers of students that we sponsor, in pass rates in their classes, attendance rates, enrollment rates among girls in the local towns.
So you're really running a school.
Well, we don't run our own school. We partner with 7 schools in our town, and we just added 17 partner schools in remote villages. So we're working really closely with each of those schools and their directors to collect ongoing data about what their enrollment rates and passage rates and attendance rates look like. Okay. And then we have what we call an after-school program in our office, and we hire local teachers who come in and tutor our students twice per week. And then we also offer supplemental education that focuses on women's rights, health education, sanitation, kind of the full spectrum of supplemental lessons for our students. But I would say that, the majority of the impact that we measure and collect is through storytelling, and we just have incredible stories of our students who overcome tremendous barriers. And the education level amongst rural girls in Togo is just 2 to 3 years. So every student that's still enrolled has achieved so much, and it's just incredible to hear so many of their stories.
So you can look at dropout rate's probably the wrong word in that environment, but you can look at continuation from being involved in your program as an impact of your program.
Exactly. And I would say, even further than that, the passage rates are really where we see a lot of impact. So in 2017, 85% of our students passed their classes and continued to the next grade level. And then since then, we've hovered around a 93% average. So that is a really high success rate that goes beyond just attendance and enrollment. It really shows that our girls are able to maintain a high level standing in their classes.
I always love stories. Being a pitch guy, I like storytelling. As you talked about, anecdotal evidence is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have the numbers, the improvement rates, and all that to back it up. Particularly important, I would assume, in chasing funding. Funding a nonprofit operation means pitching a lot and finding partners and grant partners. So I would assume you use some of that data and anecdotal stories and pictures of your participants to help you in that funding process.
Definitely. And that's actually how we got started. There's a student who was the first girl we sponsored, but she was the first girl that I met in Togo. And her name's Ololo. She was in 10th grade at the time, which I think you probably remember Ololo's story.
I do. I remember seeing Ololo on video.
Yes. Well, one of the most full circle awesome moments came this year when we actually hired Ololo full time to be on our program staff. And so she's now a high income earner, able to support her full family. She graduates high school this week. So it's just been amazing seeing that Ololo came from a position where she was about to have to drop out of school because her family could no longer afford to keep her and her brothers educated. And so we just kind of partnered with her and her family. She achieved everything, graduated top of her class, and now she's just a tremendous asset to our team.
Yeah. Those are the ones that touch your heart. That story will stick with you your whole life. I've done some work in Central America. We did something similar, I guess, and one of our original participants in this little startup venture, we microloaned some startups, grew, expanded her business, multiple businesses, ultimately went back to school, became a nurse, and has gone through that cycle over a number of years. And as I look back over my long teaching career, that's the thing that I remember the most, seeing that young woman turn into not only a businesswoman, a CEO of her own little micro enterprises, but doing something that helps her community. So Lolo's story it'll resonate with you and the rest of us for a long time. So Togo, why Togo? Why did you start She, and why did you start in Togo? Was that opportune, or your plan in that?
Very opportune. I would say there was no set plan going into this. I had taken the entrepreneurship class, like you spoke about, as just kind of an elective course. I had read a book called Half the Sky, and it talks about the plight of women around the world and how 130 million girls are not in school every year. But there was this really inspiring story about a doctor in East Africa who had seen so much success in retention and enrollment by just providing well-tailored school uniforms. And so my thought in entering this entrepreneurship class was like, seems like a very viable business that we could build around this concept, something seemingly simple. And I was taking this idea around to different professors, and someone introduced me to a professor at U of I named Ro Afachao, and he is from Togo originally. So he listened to the idea, decided that it could be a really good fit in his hometown, and agreed to partner with me to actually start this program, which was beyond my expectation at the time. But he had one condition. I had to go to Togo first to do some in-country research and make sure that it was a good fit. And so he was leading a student trip about 10 days after I first met him for spring break. And he invited me along on the trip. And it was a total scrambled mess trying to get everything in order to get over to Togo. But I arrived there 11 days later, met Alolo for the first time, and just conducted as many interviews and spent as much time with local girls as I could, and realized it was really the perfect fit for us, knowing that the education level for girls is just 2 to 3 years, but there's an incredible amount of like women's entrepreneurship and just this really beautiful culture that we thought this could really thrive in Togo.
So you went through the class, got involved in some of the pitch competitions. You won the University of Idaho's Idaho Pitch. You entered and won the Idaho Entrepreneur Challenge down in Boise. You won the Northwest Challenge up in Spokane with all the schools and college students around the Northwest. Used that, leveraged that, I guess, to help fund the startup. And I remember you facing the choice: do I take my career job, or do I start this nonprofit, which is a scary moment for someone who just got her degree and has the job of her dreams?
Yep, that was a decision I made that still surprises me. I don't think I'm like a traditionally risk inclined individual. But I just remember it was about 2 weeks before graduation, that final pitch competition had finished. There was about $35,000 available to start this idea. And I was just totally unsure what to do. And it wasn't until I actually received the job offer for the job of my dreams that I just realized it was not my passion, and that this was something that I felt like my soul was totally filled by, and I was excited. And so, yeah, I turned down my job and flew back to Togo that summer to open our program.
I remember you asking me, what do you think I should do? And it was like one of my children, one of my daughters. And you want to tell them, take that safe and secure job. But I remember saying to you, you're 22 or, early 20s, you got your whole life ahead of you, take the risk. And I don't take any credit for your decision, but I'm glad you made it, because it's been good for you. It's certainly been good for all these young women in Togo. How have you changed, and maybe how's your program changed over these 3 or 4 years?
Change has probably been the number one theme of this entire journey. We started, like I said, with such a narrow focus on school uniforms. But once I was back in Togo for an extended period of time, we just uncovered a larger amount of need that was very easily addressed if we just created a more holistic program. And so that was initially what we started doing. We expanded beyond school uniforms and then included full tuition scholarships, reusable menstrual supplies, and our year-round program. And then what we started thinking about was, could we teach our girls to sew their own school uniforms? And in realizing that girls are totally overwhelmed by an amazing amount of household responsibilities and everything, there's just not enough time in the day for them to devote to learning how to sew their uniform. So we started working with local seamstresses to kind of fill that need for us. And in meeting these local seamstresses, realize there's another large group of young women who are completely underserved. And what that means is, like, very commonly in Togo, girls will drop out of school or be forced to drop out of school at a very young age. And they'll either be married or sold into forced labor or pushed into a trade. And a really common trade for women who have not had formal education and maybe lack literacy and numeracy is to go into sewing. And so these seamstresses enter the program having not stepped foot into school, and they go through a 3-year-long apprenticeship where their family has to go into a large amount of debt. And then when they graduate, it's such an oversaturated market that there's not reliable employment opportunities. And so we realized, there's a group of women. Our focus is in creating education and long-term empowerment. Employment has to be part of that mix. And so we opened up a really small scale factory to employ these seamstresses, guarantee salaries above living wage, provide 40-hour work weeks, and paid adult learning. So every woman receives 20% of her time is toward paid adult education. And that has just grown to become another huge branch of what we do. So now we're both education and employment, but they're all working together in this really powerful circular model. And I think that's what has created this program that has such ability to scale and self-sustain. But personally, I mean, I embarked on a growth journey that I would have never anticipated. Entrepreneurship teaches you a lot about who you are and what your own values are. And it can be a very painful, lonely journey. But luckily, through it, I've met some incredible people who have helped mentor me and guide me, help me define my own personal values and find my source of confidence. Because being a young woman starting an organization that's all about empowerment, while facing insane amounts of imposter syndrome, there's a very clear disconnect. And so it was important to me that I was able to live fully in our mission too, so that I can lead and serve the girls and women that we work with to my best ability. So it's been a long and ongoing journey, but like the most rewarding experience of my life for sure.
I think you definitely can put away the imposter syndrome. You're doing great things.
I wish it were that easy, but I thank you.
Last question, I guess, expansion plans. What's in the future in Africa and beyond?
Yeah, and we've always had a vision for She that was multinational, that Togo was our starting place, but we've always wanted to create a model that's replicable and scalable. And so we've really done a lot of experimentation and finding our footing with a program that could self-sustain on social enterprise revenue. And so we make money on client projects from our seamstresses that help fuel the work that we do in girls' education and employment. And that is something that we want to be able to expand into new locations. And right now, what that looks like for us, through COVID, we experienced so many changes. And we started making masks right at the beginning of all of probably March and April. We started making masks, and we anticipated the majority of our, sorry, that's off track. Can I go back?
Go back. Yeah.
I'm so glad for redos. That makes it very, very helpful.
So mention being resilient. It's
What's
one of
that?
our themes.
So resilient.
Being resilient, having to be resilient because of COVID.
Yeah. Well, and could that be its own question?
Yeah, I'll ask you that.
Okay. So just in terms of growth, what does that look like for us?
Yes.
Okay, so the vision for She has always included, a multinational approach. We want to create this circular, self-sustaining model that can be replicated all over the world. And that model for us looks like these campuses that house both boarding schools for girls and our responsible factories that employ local women. And so we're working toward that in Togo while simultaneously, working toward that in other areas of the world. And during COVID-19, we actually started working with seamstresses in the United States who've been resettled as refugees, specifically in Boise. They were helping us respond to the crisis by making face masks. And we've seen a lot of demand from Boise businesses wanting more sustainable and responsible production. So we are, trying to move into the direction of opening our own small scale factory in Boise, Idaho, as kind of the next phase of our growth journey. But we'll continue expanding our sponsorships and supporting more girls, employing more women. That's always our first priority. So however we grow, those will be the categories that we focus on.
One of our themes for Boise Startup Week, obviously in these times, is being resilient in the face of COVID. And it sounds like you have had to shift gears a little bit and at least think about the impacts of that and meeting different demands in the marketplace?
Yeah, that's been a huge challenge, but something I'm really proud of our team for really rising to the occasion for. In this year specifically, they anticipate that an additional 10 million girls around the world will never return to school following the pandemic.
Wow.
So to us, that was really the motivator behind saying, okay, we're going to support 1,000 additional girls, and we've got to appeal to our community in just challenging times to fundraise. And our full community really stepped up and helped become part of that initiative. But I think one of probably two of the things that have served us best and prepared us for the agility and resilience that's required to weather storms like this is one, our company culture. And I think that's something we spend a lot of time focusing on. It's a big challenge with cross-cultural barriers and language barriers and everything. We have to spend a lot of additional time in curating a safe and supportive environment from women from all different kinds of backgrounds. But I remember when this was first starting, you could tell our team was going to be able to make this happen because our seamstresses, without even being asked, were immediately putting in extra hours, and they were stepping up to make over 5,000 masks in the course of 2 months. So they have really just been kind of our guiding force and inspiration, and our whole team has come behind it. So I think that's been so inspiring to watch that company culture be a real driver of our resilience and relationships. I think that's such an important thing in business, especially in social enterprise and social business, is forming relationships with your clients, with your community, with your partners that can weather any storm. And we've been so fortunate to have incredible partners that have stepped up for us, amazing donors that have stepped up for us, and clients who are purchasing more products from us and really showing the support for our program in the time where we need it the most and where our students need our service the most. So it's been incredibly inspiring. We have doubled our growth and 10 times our growth in our student program this year. And as a nonprofit going into an election year, we were kind of prepping for a little bit of a conservative year. And to see all of this happen in the midst of, just unpredictable and unprecedented times, we feel so fortunate and grateful and just really proud of ourselves for sure.
Well, I'm proud of you. I appreciate you coming on to talk with us on the Grow Track. You're doing great work here and abroad. We will put up your contact information where people can get involved, can donate, sponsor young women who need the help. And thanks again for joining us today, Peyton McGriff, Style Her Empowered.
Thank you.
All right, welcome to the Grow Track. We're talking to two young entrepreneurs today, Tim Ledford and Brandon Bledsoe of Safeguard Equipment. Tim is the CEO of the company. Brandon is the COO of the company. And they're going to give us a little bit of their history and their future with Safeguard Equipment and talk a bit about growth in the environment that we're in today. So guys, I appreciate you joining me. Yeah, founder stories are always fascinating to me. Briefly tell our Grow Track audience your founding story, how you guys got started, and maybe even more importantly, why Safeguard came into existence.
Sure. Yeah, first off, thanks for having us on the video call today. We love sharing our story and our vision and mission that we're on because it's really been the vision that has got us through the ups and downs and success of Safeguard. It hasn't been the money, but it's been the purpose of why we do what we do. So what do we do? To start, Safeguard Equipment, we create a wearable technology that people who work around high voltage electricity can wear, and it'll give them the distance and direction of anything energized around them. It uses electric and magnetic fields, so we can detect stuff through walls, we can detect stuff underground. We're the only technology in the world that can do that. To date, we've saved about 25 lives as of yesterday through this technology. And as we grow, we are creating more of an adaptive artificial intelligence technology into our wearables so that they get smarter as users wear them. So the story behind this, it all stemmed out of the University of Idaho with Brandon, myself, and our other co-founder, John Thompson. For a brief background, John and I have family members that were electric workers. Basically everyone in my family were either electricians or linemen. In fact, my grandfather was an electrician, was electrocuted back in the 80s and hospitalized for 4 weeks, flown to intensive care in Portland because he was working on a panel box on one of the dams on the Columbia River. The panel box had exploded and gave him third-degree burns. So growing up, I'd always heard stories secondhand of the trauma that he was still experiencing even 30 years after it happened. He didn't have any physical impairments, but he had a lot of mental problems from that. And then John had brothers that are linemen as well, and had grown up hearing stories from his brothers of friends that have been killed and whatnot. And then Brandon has an amazingly compassionate heart and knows how to really just identify problems and help fix those problems. So when we were together in college, we were friends, and we had signed up for your entrepreneurship class, George, not exactly knowing what we were going to do. We knew we wanted to do something that we could really get behind and be passionate about. And we got a whiteboard one day and we're writing down different ideas. And we had a lot that seemed like they could stick, but nothing we could really, really get behind. And we started just writing down commonalities. And when we realized that we wanted to do something that could really impact the world and shape it in a new way, especially towards safety, we got really excited about it. So that's when we came up with our product Compass. We had looked at the market, specifically the safety market in the utility industry, and how our demand for power has increased so much over the last 30, 40 years, as you can see just looking around, right? But the safety in the industry has not kept up at all. They're still using a lot of technology that was created back in the 60s and calling it adequate for today. So that was our aha moment, right? We saw this huge market need in a very large market. And that's what we had to do. And 2016 was kind of the dawn of when wearables were really getting popularity. Fitbit had been out for a little bit, but more and more users were getting them. Same with the iWatch had come out that year. So we thought, let's create an application on the wrist. So if their hand gets too close to something energized, it'll simply beep and they'll take their hand away quickly and they won't get electrocuted, right? Really, really simple idea. And so we ran with that. We took your class, we wrote the business plan. We ended up competing in the Idaho Entrepreneurship Challenge down in Boise, the Northwest business plan competition, and the one at the University of Idaho. And we ended up winning all 3 of them. And I believe the reason we won is because of the passion we have for what we do. And that was communicated well to the judges. That, and we had a great business model and a niche market and opportunity that we could go into. But really it was how we communicated our vision and how excited we were about it. That's what got people excited. Just like business nowadays, right? It's all about relationship. So that's where we ended off in college. We'd won all the competitions, won upwards of 35,000. I can't remember the exact number. And when we were 21, that felt like the lottery, right? That's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And we had student debt. So what you want to do is, we should start paying off student debt. We should do all these different things. But we were too passionate about what we did. So we formed an LLC, took all the money, all of it, put it in that LLC and reinvested it back into our technology and decided we'd bootstrap it. Tell me if I'm going a little too long here. I know we're short on time, but this is where the story gets really exciting, right? After this is where we started getting recognized and started getting traction. So after winning the last competition, which was the Northwest Business Plan competition here in Spokane, that's when investors started noticing us. We had the Spokane Angel Alliance and other investor groups in Idaho approach us and offer us capital to really run with this idea. And we said no initially. We had presented to some of these groups, but realized we wanted to really bootstrap this. This was our idea, and we didn't want someone else to tell us how we were supposed to run our business. If it deviated away from our mission is to save lives, give back, and continually innovate, right? That's our mission, and we didn't want someone else to tell us otherwise. So we bootstrapped the company for 6 months. We took some jobs after college. And then we got to the burnout stage, is what I would call it. We were running around like chickens with our heads cut off, right? We had our new careers, which are very demanding. You work over 50 hours a week. We were in new cities, and then we were trying to do our startup in our off hours. And that was our life. That was our entire life for 6 months. There was no free time. We'd get up at 4:30 in the morning, go to bed at 11 at night, get minimal sleep, and just rinse and repeat all day long, every day. And so at 6 months, we got very, very burnt out. And that investment started to sound a whole lot better. And we'd come to a crossing where we had to decide either we need to go all in with this business or all in with our careers, because our health this isn't sustainable for our health any longer. And so we got together on a Zoom call. We talked about it and said, let's spend a week to think about this. And we thought about it that night. For some of us, we prayed about it that night and thought, okay, we need a direction here. So the next morning I woke up and had an email in my inbox 6 months later from an investor that we hadn't heard from, and said, basically, we don't ever do this, but we want to invite you back to our group because we're still interested in investing. So I mean, call that a sign, right? I came back from Seattle. These guys, John and Brandon, came over from Moscow, Pullman area. We went to Spokane. We pitched and we raised capital 2 weeks after we had pitched. So this was February of 2017. We put in our 2 weeks in our jobs and we were off to the races. So that's our story up to launching the company. Would you like me to talk about briefly the traction we've had and the excitement we've had since then?
Absolutely.
Brandon can talk about that. I've talked a lot.
Keep going.
Geez, yeah.
Would you like to? Or
No,
you
you laid it out
keep
pretty well.
talking on?
No, it's fine. I guess since then, once we had the proof of concept kind of laid out, Tim, John, and I again kept grinding. It was just the three of us. We got about $300,000 from our investors, and we really didn't pay ourselves that much. I think a common thing a lot of startups do is they'll pay themselves more than they need pre-revenue, and it actually ends up sinking the boat. And so we were actually paying ourselves less than minimum wage for about a year and a half. And Top Ramen started tasting really good. And then we finally proved that the product worked to a Vista. And about a year and a half later, after our first investment, we got $1 million. That actually allowed us to start hiring employees to start selling, and then start building up inventory to start mass producing. Within 2 months, we were already in the green, making profit, hired a bunch of sales guys. They started cranking stuff out, saved our first life within less than the first year, I think.
Yeah, it's December. We launched in August of 18, and we had saved a life by December of 18. And that's when it got very real. So
yeah, after that, everyone was motivated. Our customers were loving it. We started becoming very responsive on fixing issues with the product. Since it was only the three of us, there was obviously some stuff that we could have improved. And honestly, it was just an opportunity for growth for the company itself. And to this day, Tim mentioned we said 24 to 25 lives. And every hurricane, our inventory is just getting cleared out. So we're very well known in the industry now at this point for our voltage and current detectors. And we're quickly getting to the point where we just don't have the capacity with employees. Now we have about 20 employees in-house. We're bringing on, I think, 3 more within the next 2 weeks. And I mean, we still have the same energy that we had since day one. So, and it's,
let me jump in. How, as you hire people, you're 6 times, 7 times as large as you were. How do you maintain that innovative, that entrepreneurial culture? And when you hire these employees, are you looking for employees? Or are you looking for the thinker, doer types who can help you innovate and grow, on down the road? I guess really what I'm asking is culture. What's the culture like at Safeguard? And have you maintained that feeling the three of you had when you first started this company?
Absolutely. This is a big question that people ask often for how have we created sustainable growth. And that is making sure you have the right butt in the right seat, right? And that person's the right person if they have the right attitude, right? So we've been very diligent and purposeful how we built the culture of this company. We've been very slow to hire because we want the right people here. Something that we follow is that I would rather have let's call him a class B talent employee, but an A personality, someone who's just an absolute go-getter, is excited to come to work every day, because skills can be taught. It's much harder to change someone's characteristics and personality. So everyone around here is so friendly, but also knows how to get stuff done. We created a real culture, a real family culture, where we really look out for each other. And it's become just a natural sequence at this point where it churns, where we don't have to be involved in the culture and be involved in every single person in the company every day now, because we've created that framework and that base where now it's sustainable itself. So people carry on that culture that we've set from the very beginning.
Excellent. So you started with one product that has evolved some, a vision for what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Where are you now in that product market, product development marketing cycle, I guess?
Yeah.
And how hard is it to pivot away from a successful product, begin focusing on new things? I guess, where are you at in that sequence?
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about that. To go back a little bit, so when you asked the previous question, we've talked a lot about our past, our present, and now we're going into the future, right? How are we going to scale this company from 50 million to $1 billion, right? Our strategy very early on was to have a vertical approach on the market, meaning that we wanted to dominate the market. We wanted to take out every competition that we have with our Compass unit before spreading out and spreading our roots out. That doesn't mean we didn't spread our roots out. It just means we spent the majority of our focus on our one product, laser focus, making sure it's done perfect, because we have a safety product. There's not a whole lot of room for error there. And then once we've captured that market and created a brand for ourselves, which we've now done, we're now expanding into multiple product lines. It's exciting too, because since we've made such a large impact in the industry, almost like a cult following, since we've saved lives, now people are all gung-ho for Safeguard. We had a lot of partners coming to us. So we're now in the process of forming joint ventures with much larger companies. We're talking, I can't say any of the names, but some of these are Fortune 50 companies. These are companies with $10 billion in assets, that kind of thing, that want to use our sensor technology now in their technology, so they have their product offline. They have that market advantage, because they're the only one in the market that has that. So people come to us. We frequently have to say no to distributors. We frequently have to say no to people that want to work with us, and we're hand choosing now who fits our vision, our new vision. So a vision will evolve, right? And the vision that we have right now is diversification and recurring revenue. As we started with one product line, that's just a one-time sale, and we'll churn every 3 years probably. We are focusing more on data now. So the second a employee steps out of his truck, everything on the job site is communicating together. And we've done this through sensors to the line, to the wearables on the user, to the truck itself, to grounding technology. So everything is talking, and it's actually capturing real-time data as well. So we're analyzing this data and getting smarter. So rather than being reactive to someone getting killed, we're now being proactive and saving someone before they make a mistake. Because everyone has a mistake eventually. Even the best lineman or the best electrical worker, he'll make a mistake eventually. That's why the death rates are so high in the industry. So we've partnered with very key people to fulfill this vision, and why we have grown our sales by 5x over 6 months since we started the company.
Right. Thank you. So you've given us a good idea how you started, where you started, and maybe where you're going to. You're taking on these external partners, joint ventures, companies are looking at you. Safeguard's your baby. You guys founded this thing, and you started it, and you've grown it by the skin of your teeth and your own sweat. As you bring these people on, what about what do you do when another company, a competitor, a joint venture partner begins thinking about, has interest in acquiring your baby? Are you guys open to that? And then maybe the secondary question, I know you love the startup world, you're bit with this thing. Do you have other ventures that you might think about doing in the future? Would you ever sell out? Would you do something else?
We've thought about that a lot. I mean, that's something that we always kind of we discuss off and on, but I think kind of we're just waiting. If that time did come up, we'd have to have a pretty good proposal on that side.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone always tries to undervaluate that, and the tough part with getting something like that would be, I mean, we're the only ones that really know, or we can see the vision that we have for the company. It's really hard to kind of portray that towards a potential buyer. Yeah, we have a lot of ideas. You can hop in there too.
Yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, you always have ideas bouncing around in your head, right? I have a book of ideas, so does Brandon. And when this venture is done or we step away from it, of course we're going to start more companies. It's addicting. It's a drug. We've had just a little bit of it. Now we have to keep having it, right? it's what we do. It's in our DNA. So to answer your first question, for acquisition, of course there's a day, we've taken investors' money, so they want to know our exit strategy, right? So there's a day where they want to either exit where we buy them out, or we go public, or there's just a straight, a pure acquisition that everyone gets paid out from, right? We all walk away. What I'd say to that first off is our mission is so important to us, which is saving lives, that whoever came to us and wanted to acquire our company, they would have to fulfill that same vision or that same mission that we're on. It's so big. How can you value saving 24 lives, right? If someone came to us and offered us $50 million or $100 million for this company, it would be really hard to say no to that, but we would say no to that if they were just going to take our technology, throw it in a vault, and then it would disappear, and then now more people are going to die, right? So first off, that's what it'd have to look like. Second, we really, really care about our team. So whatever that acquisition or merger would look like, I would want to make sure everyone on our team had a position moving forward where they could come out advantageous from it, whether they were still with the company or we place them somewhere else. It would have to be advantageous to them because this team is too awesome. These people in our company right now are going to be with us in future companies as well. We only hire the best people. So that'd be my answer to that. Second, I'm sorry, what was your second question again after acquisition? It's other ventures, right?
Yeah, where would you go after this?
After this, I think for me personally, I would stay on the technology side. I really love that process of building something from nothing and adding value to the world. That's where I would stay for a while, at least while I'm young. It's one of the more riskier sides. Anyone can do real estate or something else, but there's something special about creating something from nothing.
Yeah.
Last question.
Sure.
You are young. It's for me to be able to see you where you started in class a few years ago, and now you're running this company and you're doing great things. Does your age help or hurt? Do you ever get in a situation where you're dealing with someone, that looks a little more like me than you? You're CEOs and COOs of a growing company, but I wonder, is that ever a detriment being mid-20s?
I think there's a lot of strength because we're at a moment in our life right now where we want to learn and we're hungry for knowledge.
Yeah.
I think it does get a little daunting sometimes because you're going out into the world and you don't, at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. And half the time you don't know if what you're doing is what you should be doing, and you don't know what you should be doing. And so it kind of gets a little stressful sometimes. It was kind of fun when we first started hitting up manufacturers to get stuff going. We were just, I think we were 23, 24 at the time. Yeah, we walked in, and I don't think anyone really took us seriously when we told them that we were going to be producing like 20,000 of these things probably in the next 2 years.
Yep.
We were just some fresh college grads, and people heard about us through our investors and stuff, but they didn't really think we'd get the job done. But once we put the pedal to the metal, they really started kind of seeing the value that we were offering.
And now they have received millions of dollars in business from us because they believed in us early on. And there's a lot of people that shoot us away. So
built a lot of really good relationships with a lot of manufacturers. In terms of hiring employees, we prefer to hire people who are more knowledgeable than us. We have to learn. And if we surround people that are also trying to learn, then there's no one really to learn from. And the experience definitely helps a lot. Sometimes we could butt heads because there's just a difference between age kind of side, but I think we really learned to work with that. I don't do anything.
I do, yeah, George. I think it comes down to how you carry yourself. There is an advantage to being young. We have energy about us that a lot of older people lose. They can still have it, but a lot of times they lose it. And as long as we carry ourselves with integrity and carry ourselves with confidence, and we seek mentorship and we're open to coaching, people respect us. There's a lot of times where I go into negotiations. I've had some large negotiations I've gone into that started on the phone, and they thought I was in my 40s or 50s, and they get me on a video call and they're like, "Are you Tim?"
Yeah.
I am. And they're like, "Okay, let's do this." And it's because you don't let your age be a weakness, right? And we've taken this last 4 years has been such a growth track. We've gotten our MBA 5 times over, so we have the knowledge that a lot of people would have later in their career. So that's what I'd answer to that. Of course, there's stereotypes and whatnot for young people that we always have to overcome, but we don't let that pull us down.
Yep.
It's been fascinating for me to watch you guys grow, and I agree with your MBA comment. You've learned so much post-graduation because you're out there doing it. Appreciate you both being part of the growth track. Look forward to hearing more great things about Safe Code Equipment in the future. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Take care.